I think there's probably lots of instances in the past where I think, I regret how I handled that. I wish I'd known that sooner in my career. I think I would have rather had that knowledge at the beginning of my career as opposed to halfway through, because there are instances where I think I could have dealt with that better and that child was screaming out for help, but we saw as a discipline issue. Well, actually it probably wasn't a discipline issue.
Schools will find increasingly post-COVID that this style, this approach works better than any other approach. So whilst we're focusing on children with developmental trauma, actually this is applicable to every single person in the world. Actually, if we could apply these principles to them, we would see big shifts. It's not something that you do specifically, it's the way in which you think, it's the way in which you approach, it's the way in which you understand. That's the shift. And that you can do that on your own, and that doesn't cost anything. There is a lot of support around. There's growing networks, there's lots of trauma-informed supports, there's lots on social media, there's lots of freely available resources. So it would be really lovely if schools felt able to and had capacity to lap up all of those resources to really use them. And I think they would see really, really big changes in lots of children, not just children that fit this, profile of having experienced early trauma.
Strangely, it's really, really helped me see every child as their own individual pathway rather than the homogenous group of they're like that and they're like that. I think it's really helped me stop and think at each moment, what is it about this child's history? What is it about this child's upbringing or past or relationships? And what is it about their past which is helping or making them express themselves how they are now? Because it's always different. It's always different.
I'd love it if we could think about how these principles apply to teachers who we're expecting to do this massive job of providing all of this, additional care and nurture to our children, and also teach them and get them through to their qualifications, have good outcomes. Who's understanding them and their brains and what's going on for them and what they need?
Change is hard, isn't it? And it's a very different approach, and I had to remember that actually I'd done a lot of reading around that approach. I felt that it was really important that we had that supportive parameter around, that staff didn't feel like, well, if I don't follow this approach, what will happen? It was more of, this approach is where we want to go, this is how we want the school to be, and it's because of this, and this piece of research that we're doing it. But I've always tried to do it from a place of, well, just because the culture of the school's changed, I don't want anyone to feel like they don't belong, children or staff. So let's work together. If I was encouraging teachers in any setting, I would say to them, please be flexible, please be curious about and think about that connection and that relationship first before jumping in with the correction. I think it's Louise Bomber that said that, we need to connect with that child and then we have a right to correct them. It's about building that trusting relationship so that they will take your correction in the right way, and that only comes through curiosity and playfulness and attuning to where they're at and that empathy. Yeah, it's a worthwhile road, but it's the harder road probably, definitely. But I feel like it's worth it, and I feel the success stories are why I wake up and come to school again each day.
For the first 6 months, that lad especially wanted us to think he was horrible. Anybody who would listen, he would tell us how bad a person he was and how cross we should be with him. He almost wanted us to be cross at him because that's probably how he'd felt that his life was under control. That's who I am. He identified as somebody that people were cross towards. When we weren't, those behaviours fell by the wayside. When we weren't cross with him, those behaviours stopped happening time and time again. He needed to know that his carers weren't going to give up on him, the school wasn't going to give up on him. He was part of our community and we weren't going to let him go. And the more he felt comfortable with that, the more he's been able to regulate himself and survive in a big, massive mainstream school. I think he was testing us. I think he was trying to push us to see if we would let him go. But he knows he's one of us and we weren't going to give up on him, absolutely.
You don't give up on a kid ever, especially a traumatised kid. Never ever give up on a kid, because your reward comes to you at the end when they've done their GCSEs, they're in college, they're doing their A levels, everything. That's your reward for everything that you've done. Thank you for listening.